You and I both are Android lovers.
Mm-hmm.
And you do it for a living.
Yeah. It's a big part of what I do, for sure.
I do it because it's fun and I enjoy them. And of course, part of what we have to do is keep track of all the latest Android devices. And unlike the iPhone, where there's one every year, there's probably a new Android device every few months.
Yeah, that makes it really difficult if you're an Android lover, because then you always want the next best thing, and you're not just waiting that year.
Right.
You're every 2 to 3 months something's coming out and making you question the decision that you just made.
Question. So we're going to help you kind of bust through these questions and decide. I have been saying that the Galaxy S7 from Samsung is the best Android device out there for so many reasons. It's a great processor, it's fast. Samsung's OLED screens are the best, camera's the best, remarkable. But it's also the easiest to break, because both you and I, you can see the big crack in mine.
Yeah.
You broke yours as well. And there's a big
you can
crack
put it up
in
side by
yours.
side. I don't know if you can
because it's
see it there
basically
up at the top.
And I have the Edge.
Cracks up there.
You have the standard Galaxy S7.
Yes.
The Edge is like a slippery little fish. It's made out of glass.
That's true.
And
it's slippery.
Like, whoa.
And it's also one thing that I've noticed about the S7 series, both the Edge and just the standard S7, is that the bezel isn't extending further than the glass necessarily around the entire edge. So what you get is you get raised glass above everything else. So literally, this fell out of my pocket. For anyone who hasn't heard the story already, I was sitting cross-legged on my floor at home.
And
it was in my pocket.
It leaked out of your pocket.
It slid out of my pocket. Maybe fell, I don't know, about this far to the floor, and that's even generous. And it cracked in 3 places.
Mine only cracked here. But still, you know, the problem is when we first got these, we didn't have cases. I now have a mil-spec case from UAG that's going to protect it from now on. But
your crack is on the back, so that covers it up. You don't even know.
You're going to replace yours.
Yeah, we're getting the screen replaced.
Meanwhile, HTC, who we've liked a lot for a long time, they did the really great HTC One M7 and the M8, came out with an aluminum
M10
phone, Android phone, running also Marshmallow and the Snapdragon 820 processor. This is their HTC 10. So you and I have both reviewed it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been living with the HTC 10 for about a week and a half now as my primary device, and yeah, I certainly have some thoughts, especially in comparison with the S7, because it really feels like they're on the same battleground.
These are head-to-head.
Yes, for sure.
It's almost like if you like Samsung, get the Samsung. If you like HTC, get the HTC. They're that close. But there are still pros and cons.
They're similar in some ways. They definitely speak a different design language, as you can kind of see right off the top. The HTC 10 has that kind of aluminum backing, and I prefer that to the exposed glass on the back of the device. I just feel like that makes the device instantly less durable long term.
It also reminds one a little bit of the beautiful HTC One, which I was a big fan of, although the bezels are a lot deeper than they were on the old HTC. It doesn't have one thing I loved about the HTC One, which is the dual front-facing speakers. I'm surprised they abandoned that.
Yeah, well, they do have 2 speakers. It's just one's on top.
Right. That's your phone speaker.
And then one's underneath, shooting, you know, outwards, which if you're, you know, depending on where your phone is, that's going to be muffled. It's going to be cupped, you know, with your hand, depending on how you're holding it. So it's not quite as effective.
This is the quote subwoofer, and this is the tweeter.
I'm pretty sure on any device that's this thin, you don't actually have a subwoofer. Yeah, there is no such thing as rumbling lows out of speakers like this. But I like its durability. I like that it has less glass and that it actually does have the lip on the bezel for me, because I've now shattered 2 screens. I went from going years of never dropping a device and shattering a screen to 2 within a year. So there it goes. Less UI clutter, although I put Google Now Launcher on here, and I think the kind of the testament to how scaled back HTC Sense is now versus what it used to be is you put Google Now Launcher on there.
And it's pretty plain, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even notification pane is really just pretty standard for the most part. Where you really see the enhancements is when you go into the settings. And even there, it's like they took what you expect to see and maybe removed some like separating lines and did a couple of additions, but pretty close to stock.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of some of the apps Samsung adds to its Galaxy phones, like the S Voice. I disable that immediately. But I have kind of become a little used to the settings pane and the quick settings pane, and I miss that a little bit. I do like TouchWiz's quick settings. They're configurable. They're right there. It's easy to change those. That's missing on the HTC. But, you know, Samsung did something pretty much unacceptable. They flipped the back and recents button on this phone, whereas it's traditionally placed on the HTC 10, and I got to give them points for that. Also, even though the home button on the HTC 10 is a physical home button, what's nice about it is it doesn't move. That's your fingerprint reader on both phones.
I have noticed that depending on the size of your thumb, like sometimes when I go to unlock it, because these capacitive buttons are on the side, it will go.
You'll hit those.
It'll trigger those along with it, and that can be a little inconvenient, but that's mine.
Nexus phones have all of the controls on screen. None of them are physical controls, and that's probably the right way to do it.
That's how I'm pretty used to it. One thing I do not like about the HTC 10, and I realize this is a totally limited use case, but it's one thing that would almost kill this phone for me, is that if you have any sort of polarized lenses, say you wear sunglasses that are polarized, this will basically, when you hold it portrait, it kills the display entirely. You can see absolutely nothing. So if I'm out in the sun with this device and I'm wearing my sunglasses, many people have polarized lenses, I can't see anything. I have to take my sunglasses off, and it's really inconvenient to have.
Well, that's a larger point because the HTC is an IPS LCD screen. Samsung's are Super AMOLEDs. I really prefer the Super AMOLED. Even if you set brightness aside, and you can see the Samsung, which is on your screen left, is brighter. I think the colors are more accurate. The blacks are blacker. The whites are whiter. I do prefer the Samsung. I think they make the best screens out there. So for screen, we've got to give pride of place to the Samsung Galaxy.
Also got to give it to the camera. Camera on the S7 is pretty phenomenal.
They're very similar. You know, this is the HTC 10 is using the same sensor as in the Google 6P. It's a nice big pixel sensor with phase focusing built in.
Laser focusing.
Laser focusing as well. I find the focusing, even though it's laser, is not as fast. It takes a while to focus on the HTC 10. I don't even notice it focusing on the S7. And I think that while both give excellent images, I think the S7 gets a slightly better image.
I would agree. How's your battery life been on the 10?
S7 is a clear winner on that. Now, both of them get through the day. So, I mean, both of them are better, and I think that's because of Marshmallow Android 6, than these phones used to be, much better than the S6 or the HTC One. But this one is, I'm getting 17, 18, 20 hours pretty regularly on the S7, and I got to say, that's maybe the most important thing for me.
For sure.
I do miss the fact that, and I'm sad about the fact that Samsung elected to use, probably because of their Gear VR headsets, the same old micro USB port on theirs. I can't wait till everybody's gone to Type-C connectors as the HTC has. That's a great connector, and it's everywhere.
I completely agree. I will say along that line, though, and it's kind of a negative, is, you know, one of the things that we really like about USB, the way it's been, is that, you know, we've collected all of these chargers over the years, right? So the charger packs, the cables, they always fit and they always seem to work. Well, with USB-C, there's different types of fast charging. So, for example, my 6P charger and USB-C cable will charge this very slowly. Which I didn't realize this the first time. I plugged it in, went back to it a couple hours later, and it was like 5% increase. I was like, wow, that is really slow.
It's the new Qualcomm
there's a little bit of
3
difference.
fast charging. So you
got to be aware
use their
of it
charger or a high amperage charger. It doesn't have wireless charging. I really miss that. I love the fact that the S7, I just keep it on my wireless charger.
Yeah, that's a luxury I have not explored personally very much, but people who have it love it.
But these are all minor differences. This is a very competent feature phone. It's a little less expensive, isn't it, than the...
Yes.
I think it's like $100 less than the S7.
Yeah, and I mean, I even got it for $100 less than that because when they first launched it, they launched it at $100 off for a short time.
That's a compelling argument if price is an issue for you. But I'm going to stick with the Galaxy S7. When you get yours fixed, what do you think?
Man, I don't know. And I mean, beyond that, it's really hard for me to stray from the Nexus devices because that's just what I'm used to. But between these two, I probably would end up sticking with the 10 personally.
There you go.
Only because durability is pretty important to me these days. I do not want to crack a third screen in a year, so I kind of feel like I have better chances with the 10.
They're both excellent phones. Either one would be happy to have.
Absolutely.
If I broke my S7, I'd carry the HTC 10 with proud happiness, and I would be satisfied with it. But given the choice, I think I'm going to keep a good case on my S7 and use that one. I like that phone.